Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's Overview and Scrutiny Committee at Warwick District Council. It's 3rd of February 2026. I'm Councillor Andrew Melton. I'm the chair of the committee. Please be aware that the meeting is being live streamed to the council's YouTube channel, and as part of our commitment to reducing paper, councillors and officers will be using electronic devices as well during the course of the evening. We're joined this evening by most of the cabinet, by the looks of it, and a large range of officers as well. I won't introduce them now, but I'll introduce them as we go into the various sessions. You will know as well that obviously our practice before each scrutiny meeting is to submit and publish questions and answers on the website. So I'm grateful to officers who've supported that and members who've asked questions, and members not just on this committee, I might add as well, but those where those Q&As relate to items in the public domain, those answers are published on the website. I will do the emergency procedure because we have a number of new people here this evening and a member of the public. So there are no planned tests of the emergency alarm. If it does sound, everyone present must leave by the designated exit route. If the preferred route is blocked, use the nearest signed alternative route. Do not use the lift. Everyone must assemble at the designated point, which is the central reservation in Regent Grove in front of the police station. Members of the public and press should report to a member of the town hall staff who will be wearing yellow fluorescent jackets. Councillors and officers should report to the scrutiny officer. Please do not re-enter the building until the fire officer advises that it is safe to do so. Also, last bit of admin up front is I've been asked to remind councillors when using the mics, please don't put things in front of them because it does muffle your voice. So, right, with that, we will move on to agenda item 1, which is apologies and substitutes. We have apologies from Councillor Dray, and we have Councillor Gorman substituting for Councillor Armstrong. So, Councillor Gorman, welcome, and thank you for standing in for Councillor Armstrong. Are there any other apologies? Not expecting any. Right, okay, we'll move on. Any declarations of interest on the agenda this evening? No, I'll take that as a no. And I'm now going to ask if we could confirm the minutes of 3 meetings, please. And if members are happy, we could do this en bloc. Those are the meetings of the 11th of November 2025, 25th of November 2025, and the 17th of December 2025. I will propose that from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Luckhurst, thank you. All those in favour? Okay, that's everyone. That's accepted. Great, thank you. First item, or next item, sorry, is the work programme. And there's a few changes I'm just proposing on this to committee, if possible. So, particularly 24th of February is looking like a fairly busy meeting, and I'm proposing that we do a couple of things. One is we remove the Milverton Homes agenda item from February. I know it's something we've been keeping a close eye on. The reason I'm suggesting that is it is actually coming as a cabinet report in March. So if members do wish to explore that further, we can call it into our March meeting in advance of cabinet if necessary. In addition, I propose that we push the procurement report item back to the 17th of March because the procurement champions and SLT are due to meet for their biannual meeting on the 26th of February. And therefore it would make sense for ONS for it to come to ONS following that meeting rather than before. Are members comfortable with those? Right, I'm getting enough nods. And is there anything else that members would... Councillor Day, come to you.
Chairman, thank you. It is related to this matter. Whilst I'm content with the changes you're proposing to the work programme, I would like it noted that just in the cabinet papers alone, there are over 1,100 pages to consider for tonight's meeting, some of which arrived quite late. We do support members to work, which means we're expecting them to do this on the weekends and evenings. And if we are to continue with a program of delivering that number of papers, and I'm mindful we have things like the local plan to consider coming up, then I'd ask that committee services, through you, Chairman, carefully reflect on what the priorities are in this work program, and either consider providing summaries to members to say, read page 4, page 22 and page 15 for the key points, or find some other way to enable us to manage this workload. This is not our full-time job, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Day. I think that's a very good point, well made. Councillor Barton, is this on the same point?
Yeah, same point. When TNT came today, Friday, and I had to reinforce the floorboards when it dropped through it's just impossible. You can't read everything.
I think, so both really good points. I think we would ask committee services via the Deputy Chief Executive to review that. I think the other thing I would add is not just, yes, 1,100 plus pages, but also about 20 different items, I think, and actually that's difficult. It's not just the weight of papers, it's actually the number of different items that we're trying to keep across as well. So whilst we're doing, it's a little bit, it's the sort of scrutiny roulette almost, whether we actually find the bullet or we don't. So I think we've got to be careful of that because we've got to make sure that we're doing this job properly, and it's difficult with that number of papers. Is Mr. Leach wishing to come in, or Mr. Councillor Davison? Councillor Davison.
Yes, it is a constant issue. Ambitious council looking to make a lot of changes. Easy to say, let's make each report shorter, and then we get the criticism, you haven't given us enough detail. So it's hard. Officers try to use appendices to make that easier, and I think they do quite well. They have a summary at the top, which personally I think is getting better, but obviously critique of that is welcome. Officers have had report writing training, and again, I think it is getting better. So I think they are getting clearer, and I would urge councillors to manage the way through the papers rather than reading every word. And then the other point, of course, is yes, we'd like fewer reports, but when we say to any area, you don't need to bring this, do you? The answer is yes, we do. So if there is a way forwards, do give us some help on that, because it is a thing we do consider quite frequently, and we can't see an easy way forwards on that. Apologies for the lateness, though. I do get cross with this as much as anyone else in the room, and it is challenging, and my plea to officers is be realistic as early as possible, and we've been saying this. So the AI paper should have been pulled ages ago rather than just now.
Thank you, Councillor Davison. Councillor Day, did you wish to come back?
No, those points are accepted, but as the administration, you would like us to provide active and encouraging and positive scrutiny. We need to find a way to do that. When you've got this much, and that's just on the cabinet agenda, let alone the businesses items we wish to address as a committee, the alternative possibly is to have more committee meetings, so that we can actually do this properly. Otherwise, let's not pretend that we are giving you the scrutiny that you would wish us to.
Thank you, Councillor Day. I think that was well said. Okay, so I'm going to move on now. So we have a lot on our agenda this evening. So we have 2 items that are part of the ONS agenda. Do I need to vote the changes on? Sorry, I need to ask. So I will propose the changes on the work plan. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Knight. All those in favour? Great. Okay, we've done that. Thank you, Josie. Right, so yes, we have 2 items which are ONS agenda items, and we have 3 call-ins as well, which I think are all valuable call-ins. I am going to ask everyone just to keep us moving through. So officers and members of the Cabinet, if you can keep your comments short, brief, concise, helping us answer the questions, that will be considerate of everyone in the room as well. And also members of the committee as well, if we could just make sure, let's keep the questions really, really sharp as well. I'm going to try and set a time limit on each item. It might seem really mean. We might not hit that time limit, but it's an expectation of how do we actually get this scrutiny sort of really, really focused and make sure we're talking about the right things. So with that, I'm going to move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the Q3 Performance and Complaints Report. I'm going to come, I think, to Dale Duffy, Policy Performance and Complaints Manager, to introduce the report and any highlights you want to pull out.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll start by saying that the team that handles the Council's performance at the moment is currently very small, and the capacity has been further impacted by absence within the team. Today marked the first day of interviews for 2 policy performance and complaints officers, and we have another day tomorrow. We had a good response and a very strong calibre of candidates. Myself and the Head of Governance and Monitoring Officer spent Friday looking at the onboarding process for the new recruits and set out the work plan for the policy performance and complaints team for the next 2 years. Members will recognise the missing performance data. This is relatable because of the impact of those absences within the team and the continued prioritisation of responding to stage 2 complaints. As part of the planning work that took place on Friday, I've identified that the current quarterly reporting schedule means a quick turnaround time between delivery of the one report to committee and beginning the next report ready for the future delivery to committee. The recommendations in this report to reduce the reporting frequency to half yearly will allow the team to focus on the delivery of the wider service. The intention is to produce a high-level monthly report for SLT to review each month to ensure continued check and challenge of operational performance, and Housing Scrutiny Committee will continue to consider housing complaints performance. I'd like to remind members that service area plans are available to review at any time, and they can send any questions relating to performance to the relevant head of service. I would like to highlight in this report that I have a concern over the ratio of complaints that are escalating to stage 2 of the Council's process, and acknowledge this is an area where further research is required. As mentioned previously, the recommended change to half-yearly reporting schedule frees up the team to research the reasons behind complaint escalations, develop and deliver complaints training for stage 1 investigators, and develop the complaints process into the CRM and review the approach to performance management. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dale. That's really, really helpful. So there is something, I think there's a couple of points there that you raised. I do want members' views about this proposed move to half yearly in terms of the complaints reporting. I have indicated I'm supportive as chair, but I do want members' views on that. And then also there's obviously a specific issue around sort of complaints moving from stage 1 to stage 2 as well, and the balance of those. So I am going to see if we can get this through in 15 minutes. That's going to be really tight, but that's really sharp. So who would like to kick me off? Councillor Kohler, we'll come to you.
I'll go first and I'll go quick. Firstly, supportive of moving to 6 months. Secondly, in 2.9 of the report, you say that 12 stage 1 complaints were refused. So can you just clarify, does that mean that that's 12 of the 128 that are noted in the table 2, or does it mean that actually 140 stage 1 complaints were submitted and 12 of those were rejected, so they weren't treated as a complaint? Is that question clear?
Yes, those 12 are included in the 128 above.
I think it would be great just to include that in the table. Right? It's great that you've listed out the reasons why they were refused, but I would find it clearer personally. Secondly, I just wanted to move to the appendix quickly. So on page 5 or slide 5 of the appendix, it makes it clear that the days to acknowledge stage 1 complaints, there's a huge peak on day 5. The service level agreement is 5 days. So does that mean we're waiting for day 5 to come around, or is it merely a coincidence that that's where the huge peak is?
Through you, Chair, it is about resource and response. So actually, if in terms of prioritising the work, if you've got a deadline of 5 working days to acknowledge, and you've got a number coming in, you'll be working back to the oldest first, and managing that caseload because there is a significant demand. It is one of the aspects we are looking at as part of the CRM work, so that you begin to get, not begin to get to, but you can aim for having automatic acknowledgement to an extent, or reducing that process down.
Thank you, that makes great sense. And there's a beautiful pivot to my last question. I did just want to comment before we move to that on the next slide, where it says the percentage of complaints completed within time frame. It says 112% were completed in time and 16% were late. So be good just to clarify the data in there. But my question was going to be around what you just mentioned in terms of moving to the CRM. It feels like that's a big step. Could you just give us a quick update on how long a period that transition is going to take? Obviously, you've got to transform your process to take advantage of the CRM. So have you got a window where you're planning to do that within?
Through you, Chair, this might be a joint answer here. Councillor, I think you might be misreading that graph slightly incorrectly, and that is part of how it's displayed, because if you look, it's 112,88%, and then 16,12%. So it's a challenge how to label that. In terms of CRM, I'm sure the leader will answer this if I miss anything out, but it is regular discussions with the leader in terms of clear priorities for the service area CRM. There is a business case which is going to the change board on the 16th of February and SLT on the 19th of February. The reason for taking those extra steps, which is unusual, is because of how this impacts across the organisation. It will be the first part of the CRM which touches every service area. Every service area head of service is going to have to buy into this and the challenges which come with it. So that's the first part. The process mapping actually was a part that Dale Duffy did when he started in the team, in the role, because actually he was mapping out all our processes because it was part of the regulatory response for housing anyway, so you can map it out. So actually a large chunk of the work we've done. I'm not going to say what my target is just yet. There may be more in the service area plan which comes to Cabinet in March. And the reason why I say there may be more, it depends how we get through the next steps, because actually the timelines is mapping out once we've got that business case approved and we're all happy with it.
Great, thank you, Councillor Kohler. Any other questions? Councillor Harrison.
No, I'm not sure if I'm logged in there. Is that okay there? Yeah. That's, you got it, good. Just thank you, Chair. Hope that's still working. Just looking at the appendices again of the report. Again, pick up a similar point to Councillor Kohler. Picks up about the obviously the peak, the spike there. Item 5, page 13 of the appendix. I've noticed the same data, same figures, are applied to those stage 1 complaints which were completed within the time frame received to completion is the same as those that were acknowledged. Now, is that not quite unusual? I'm trying to think, because presumably some take longer to complete, as opposed to just acknowledging within the 5 days. I think it's the same data. This is on item 5, page 13. It's the same as page 11, which is acknowledgement. It was the fact that with the same figures. I was thinking that seemed quite unusual, that the same number were acknowledged within time frame as completed. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then I had a couple of questions on the main report.
Just in response to that, for the first question, I'll take that away and double check the figures for you.
Sure. Thank you. And 3.6 of the main report, I was quite interested. It's an interesting paragraph there. There appears to be a trend of misinformation appearing within some complaints the council receives. This increases the amount of time officers spend. So it's about resourcing and obviously getting more complex. And also, as the comment there, becoming more litigious, because I was kind of, which side is that? Is that, you know, the risks obviously with that, with accuracy, and does that mean you're having to check the complainant's facts and, you know, evidence more thoroughly? I was just kind of curious about what that might, the implications of, which means we've got to be careful, I guess, with these complaints. And then finally, I had a question on 4.1, which I didn't quite understand. 4.1, which is just below that in the main report, It talks about response time for stage 2 there being 40 days, 32 days. I'm thinking, does that not contradict the 5 days? But I may have something wrong there. That might be my misunderstanding. It talks about a downward trend, which is great to see. But I couldn't quite work out, you know, these are quite lengthy working days to complete the stage 2 ones. And how does that, with vis-a-vis with the 5 working day requirement? Thank you.
Through you, Chair, I'll respond in terms of question 3.6. It's probably best summarised in a complaint we had about 2 or 3 weeks ago, which was 3 pages long. And basically, it was a lot of legal challenge and points of failing the council had failed to deliver and various laws the council had broken, which came down to the point of, please, therefore, can you come and collect my bin? Now, if we had a service request form to go and collect the bin, it would have been dealt with much quicker. So actually people are using a lot more words and explaining their points and challenging us on law, when actually some of the complaints they're making are actually quite very simple points. I just want my bin emptied. And actually it was one of the points we're talking about with the introduction of the CRM, because obviously, as you all know, CRM is already used for missed bin collections on our website. And actually we might be able to link bits together quite cleverly so that people just get that request through, because actually at the end of the day people just want their bin emptied, and we've seen that in a number of cases where people are becoming more, they're setting out their cases in more and more detail, which is good, but actually they're going down more, there's this law, there's that law, and some of the laws, to be brutally honest with you, on some of the challenges aren't UK laws. We've had challenges on American laws and Scottish laws as well, which obviously don't apply in England. So but you have to read that and digest it and understand it and work through it. And that's where the more time's being taken. We think, can't prove as yet, people are using AI more and more for complaints. We have seen this as another one where somebody emailed back the other week to one of our responses and signed the email with the officer's name on behalf of the complainant. So we are getting suspicious, and again, that's one of the reasons why we're working on that AI policy, to help look at those pieces of work as well.
In response to the question around 4.1, so those are the working days to fully respond rather than the acknowledgement. So we have up to 40 days. Is that what the question was getting? Yeah. Yeah, so we're looking at 20 days, but additional 20 if we get that agreement from the complainant. So that is coming down, but I see that going back up again while we're in this period of recruitment for the new roles.
The remaining point about Appendix 1, about somebody going to look at why the data didn't seem quite correct on the Appendix 1, Item 5.
I think you said you were going to take that away and take a look at it, so that's good. Great, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Whiteman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. You came back on the artificial intelligence. I was going to say that, I know from my experience in legal complaints, it's pretty much across the sector. There's been a lot of research, and I do think that's probably going to be an ongoing problem that's going to be escalating, not getting worse. Which kind of ties into the question I was going to ask, really, in regards to 4.2. We've clearly made progress in regards to stage 2 complaints, but 4.2 is suggesting that we're slipping back, that somebody's left, that we've got problems. There doesn't seem an awful lot of resilience at the moment, and I appreciate resources are tight, but there are plans there, but it doesn't look good, particularly with the housing ombudsman, that we're getting sort of notices this early in the year for not responding to information requests, and we're anticipating already that timescales for responding are going to be increasing, and we're going to be missing more deadlines. I just wonder, given that we're in the current budget setting at the moment, do we have enough resource? I know resources across the board are tight, but it does strike me that's going in the wrong direction, and that's a bit worrying.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's something we acknowledge is the need to bring these 2 new staff in, so appoint people and fully train and develop them. So that's kind of where my focus has to be for the time being. And that, while I'm not going to leave the stage twos to their own devices, I will be continuing to work through them, but there will be a period where we see that performance slip. One thing that we're very keen on doing is liaising with the complainants to make sure that we're keeping them up to date with the position of their complaint, and requesting those extensions for deadlines where possible. But both ombudsmen are quite not lenient, but they will accept the position of needing to extend the complaint deadline if you've shown that you're communicating well with the complainant throughout the process.
The bit I'd add to that as well is the bit that was set out in the introduction was the bit about improving stage ones, because the performance measure that Dale's got within the team operational plan for next year is that ratio between number of stage ones and number of stage twos. Because at the moment, that's going the wrong way. There's more and more stage twos as a ratio, ignore the number, as a ratio, and that needs to reduce down again. And we need to look at the reasons why behind that. And that's a key role for the 2 new people coming in, is to start providing that feedback, constructive feedback to the people who do stage ones, where actually if you improve on this, it's going to help, and it's helping the customer, but also reducing the workload for the council as well. And with that, we're confident the resources will be there to do the work from the evidence we've seen. The bit we have seen was that last quarter we saw a significant spike in the number of stage 2 complaints, and it's having that ability to take a step back and go, okay, why has that spike occurred? What's the trend behind that? And again, that's getting the resources in, having that bit of reflection time. And the bit which is happening there particularly, I'm not saying which service area where the spike is, but there is now monthly meetings with housing in terms of looking at their complaints overall and the learning from within them as well.
Great, thank you. I should also just let members know I did do a little bit of just inquiring around with the Housing Scrutiny Committee to ensure that the complaints are very much on their agenda, which they are, which is good, because actually a lot of complaints obviously relate to housing. Okay, can I just, Councillor Melrose.
Just to add a bit around resources, because obviously there is Dale's part of the resources, but also there's housing complaints resources, and I'm sure you're all looking at the charts, see one particular department on there. So yes, it is on housing scrutiny, and we are looking at what resources to have in that housing complaints unit as well. So I just want to add that that side of the discussion is also being had.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Knight, I'll probably take this as the last question, if that's okay. Oh, and Councillor Kohler, we've got a couple of minutes, so Councillor Knight, we'll come to you.
I'm just going to come with a good news where I can see the figures coming down, both with stage 3, where it's pretty good, where I like that. But stage 1 and stage 2, as what you discussed, is still a bit high. But I think gradually working on it more, it will come down much better than how it used to be previous. So thank for the staff doing the job.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Knight. Councillor Kohler, quick one.
Just very quickly, just the issue that's outlined in the confidential appendix, I guess I just wanted assurance that that's being picked up and will get transferred to the Housing Scrutiny Committee.
Through you, Chair, yes, very much so, but obviously there was a perception there from members, and we felt that was valuable information in that confidential appendix, and I think Housing Scrutiny Committee will see the same value in that as well. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Before we just wrap up on this item, can we just ask all members if they are happy with moving the reporting to every 6 months to basically allow the team to get on with their work and of solving the complaints rather than just telling us about them. So, okay, I think I've had enough nods in there to make me happy with that. Thank you. And I know it's been tough with the limited resource that you've had in the team, so thank you for keeping going, because I know it's not always easy. Brilliant. Right, let's move on then to the next item on the agenda, which is a report written by David Elkington, our Strategic Director on Project Management Capability and Capacity and Capability. This was one that actually we requested in September to update how project management capacity and capability was being improved. Dave, I will ask you to introduce the report. Just to be aware, obviously this does cover some of the questions of the pump rooms as well. So if we end up in getting into confidential territory, we may have to go into confidential session. But can I start, Mr. Elkington, by saying I thought this was a crackingly good report. I was slightly worried in the first page. I thought it was going to be a little bit defensive, but actually I thought it was a very open, transparent report, and I think it's got some good recommendations in the back and some risks as well that I'd want the committee to talk about. So thank you for your work on that. And over to you for a quick introduction.
Thank you, Chair. So, as outlined, this report, it describes the current situation in terms of Warwick District Council's corporate project management capacity. It covers the issues that we faced in terms of our still current and previous approaches to project management across the council. There is the second component around the lessons learned from the current pump rooms projects and how they tie into some of our current project management practices. So I assume that the paper's been read. If so, I'm open to questions.
Right, thank you, Mr. Elkington. Questions, members? Councillor Kohler, well, why not start with you?
Happy to go first. And likewise, I find it an interesting read. I always love reading about project management. I guess in 3.2.1, you talk about establishment of a Warwick Way, and unfortunately that we were unable to achieve a rollout of that. So in terms of project management methodology, it sounds like we don't have a consistent methodology. Do we have a number of methodology types, or is it just a free-for-all?
Good question. It's not a free-for-all. So there are some standards. I mean, as you'd expect with any sort of local authority, waterfall methods like Prince 2, they still have a place within the organisation, and people have adopted those in various different ways and have taken elements of it that have suited the projects that they've ran. We've also got a number of agile approaches that have been taken as well, which again, depending on the types of projects that have been used, that they've been deployed on, the people have implemented them in different ways. What I will say on that is what the project management community of practice have been trying to do. They have drawn all of these different project management approaches and all of the different methodologies and all the different documents that have been created across the whole of the council, and they have brought them together into a single library which they've now got access to. One of the outcomes for the community of practice and for the corporate project team over the next 6 months, and it's in our forthcoming service plan, is to try and unify those project management approaches and standardise them, so that if we have a waterfall project that requires something like Prince 2, there's a standard set of documents to initiate the project, to report on its progress, to manage its risk, and to close it down at the end. And the same approach again when it comes to our more agile methods. We will have that approach set out for people to follow. That's within the realms of the PM COP. We're making sure that through the creation of the corporate program management team, they have the capacity to actually do that, because up until now it has been a group of project managers from across the council that have been doing this on a voluntary basis alongside their other work. So there's a lot that's in use at the moment, and in the absence of sort of, as it says in the paper, in the absence of anything centrally to guide people, people have taken their own approach, but we're trying to draw that back in now and make sure that we have something solid to go forward with.
Thank you. Excellent. To know that there's a direction of travel. 3.3.2 mentions pioneering the use of Monday.com. Are you envisaging standardising on a platform like that, or is it going to be an optional thing for projects if they wish and if they can afford it?
Okay, so we've used Monday.com extensively on the programme of housing improvement and on the fire safety work that's taking place in the housing team. We have as well, again, through the PM COP and the work that they've been doing, we've looked at a number of other tools that were available to the council and the different costs that were associated with them. There was no firm decision made over what specific application we were going to use. Obviously, Monday has gained quite a following within the housing team, and the staff that are in the corporate programme team as well are familiar with its operation. So that is something that we are going to look at trying with them over the next few months, and then working out whether that is the best approach to take corporately. I mean, we do as well have to take account of the fact that some of our other the organisations that we work with will use the sort of ubiquitous project approach. Some will use Excel, as we've done for some projects in the past. But we're trying to find that standard approach, and that ties into the work that we're trying to do as well, particularly in relation to construction projects, where it comes to the gathering of information and making sure that we've got all of the documentation in place, and creating portals where we can pull information together right from the very start of the project, rather than sort of having a degree of reliance on our suppliers. So there's quite a big task to try and tie all of that together.
Thank you very much. So is the direction of travel that you're going to aim to come back in 6 months or a year with a formal project management strategy or methodology that documents the procedures and the processes that all project managers will fit into?
If the committee would like us to come back in 6 months' time and report on that progress and how it's come together and what's happened, then we can absolutely do that.
I, for one, would love that. I guess if I could make another request, it would be for that to be accompanied with a portfolio report. So a list of all the projects and programmes that are going on within the council, who is project managing or programme managing them, what kind of methodology it is, and what kind of status it's at. That would be life-changing for me, I think, as a councillor.
In which case, I'm sure you'll be very pleased to know that you're not actually very far away from having access to that. So the ICT team, they've been working with Dale, who's left now, and with the PM COP to put together a tool which highlights all of the major work streams and all of the projects that are going on across the council. It contains all the various details about it. It's in the late stages of being tested at the moment, but the intention is to make that available. So you will be able to see all of the work streams that are going on shortly.
I'm a very happy councillor. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we will ask for an updated report 12 months' time with the project management strategy. I'll come to Councillor Day in a moment. Just on that point, in terms of how we develop our approach, are we thinking about how we align with other councils that we may end up merging with at some point in the future, just to make sure we've got, I don't know, we're using some of their best practice or trying to align now rather than having to change everything again in 2 years' time or whenever that day is?
There's a combination of answers to that. So the work of the PM COP, when they started drawing together plans for how we could look at project management in the future, they did engage with some of our neighbours. So we have, for example, knowledge of the systems and the approaches that Stratford take. We have knowledge of the systems and approaches that the county takes as well. Part of the work that's going on at the moment in preparation for local government reorganisation is trying to tie together where some of those commonalities exist and trying to take an approach that will be easier for us in the future to adapt. So it's something that is going to be taken account of. And we absolutely won't go down the route of adopting a methodology or an approach that won't then be adaptable to work with partners in the future.
Great, thank you. Councillor Day.
Chairman, thank you. I've got a few items to raise on this one. Firstly, I agree with members' sentiment. It's a very helpful report, and I'm grateful for the transparency and honesty that's come through here. I think that's the only way we're going to learn and get stronger and better at doing this. So thank you for that, Mr. Elkington. There's a few points. First one is really, and I'm not going to go into the confidential appendix, just to reassure the leader behind you, but it did raise for me some big questions around where we are with what appeared to be well-established, well-known contractors, and how prepared are they to get, if you like, on board so that we can, cross-pollinate systems, etc. So in part, the other part of that question, I'll give them both to you, is obviously we work with other development partners, and I see Mr. O'Neill here, with some of the projects listed like the Stoneleigh Arms. And again, a different skill set for us there, but again, getting them all aligned so that we're, if you like, talking the same language, using the same IT reporting in an efficient way. Is that part of what's going on? We've got control over our team. Are we getting the contractors lined up as well?
So in terms of our contractors, the work that we're doing with them at the moment, lots of the contracts that we've undertaken have had mixed approaches to project management, and we've taken where, for example, it comes to the cataloguing of documents relating to a particular piece of building work or something. Again, we've relied more on the contractors than we've sort of taken the initiative on ourselves to create repositories where they can put information. That's not created us, it's not to say it's created us any massive problems. We've always been able to get the data back from the contractors at the end of it, but we've not been on the front foot with it. Where we work with contractors, we have the scope within our contracts to be very clear about how we want data to be handled. We're not asking that we won't be asking them to access any systems that are particularly difficult or they won't have come across before. So if, for example, we wanted to create a document repository for a project, that would be on SharePoint. That would be accessible through, sort of standard Microsoft apps, through Teams, through the internet, whatever platform they choose to use. It's just up to us to specify how we want them to work with us and establish that right at the very beginning of the project. And in terms of how that works with other teams as well, so with Martin's team, for example, we will make those tools and those guides accessible to all of the project managers across the council. I mean, there's 50 plus members of the PM COP at the moment, and they represent virtually, well, every service area within the council has someone that is represented on that group. So when those tools become available, when the approaches and the documentation are out there, other services will be able to adopt it as well.
Thank you. That's music to my ears. And again, it builds in a system of learning in the council, so I'm delighted to see that. I've got two more questions and I'm done, I promise. Firstly, an observation, and that is to thank Councillor King for his work as a member, as I understand it, in reading this report and the contributions that have been made there. And you do address that in the report, which I was pleased to see, because as we all know, members have other skills they can bring to bear, hopefully for the benefit of the council. I'm mindful too of a project very close to my heart, close to home, the Tatchbrook Country Park, which has, Battle of the Somme was just a dance in the park by comparison in duration. And I'm just wondering, we have a member board there involved, we've got other stakeholders involved, and is there lessons to be learnt about when and how to use members? And I'm also asking, the third question from me is you've done a lessons learned, really constructive lessons learned on the pump rooms roof project. Will the Tatchbrook Country Park have a lessons learned session done on it in a similar way? Oh, thumbs up from Councillor King.
Okay, so the project management responsibility for Tatchbrook Country Park has now transitioned into the new corporate programme management team, so they will, at the end of it, follow up with the lessons learned to the close down for the project, so you will get an entire report, probably hundreds of pages long, about how things have gone and what could have been changed. I think in terms of where members become involved in projects, there's a really fine balance to be struck between having members, for want of a better description, micromanaging all of the aspects of it, and not doing that, because that is unhelpful, but also staying close enough to the project to genuinely be able to support it where that representation is needed. And the Pump Rooms project was a really good example of that, because obviously Councillor King, in his approach to it, he's been close to the project throughout. He's got knowledge and skills that were applicable to it, and and a desire to see the project actually taken forward and delivered, which it has helped with the enthusiasm of the team. It's helped to get the issues across. It's helped when we've had to report things back to Cabinet. And across all of our major projects where there's a member involvement, regardless of where that board membership comes from, it's healthy to have a degree of challenge. It's healthy to have the degree of enthusiasm. So if members, I would encourage members for the projects that they're allocated to keep a close eye on them, to ask questions about them, to be enthusiastic about what's going on, because we rely on you to sell it at the highest levels.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barton.
Yeah, just a couple of things. One thing you've just said, David, was contractors holding data. We sort of rely on contractors holding data. I do believe that's sort of what the housing used to do, and we got into trouble for that. The other thing is, the statement here, Warwick District Council currently has a mixture of project management tools in use, ranging from Excel through to online cloud-based collaboration. I would have thought one thing would have been desirable, whether it's changing a double socket or rewiring a house. One portal would have been good. Could you just very, very briefly explain what Monday.com is?
Okay, so Monday.com, it's an online project management tool. So it lets you record all of the aspects of your projects. It lets you list all of your key milestones, all of the different work streams that are available, and you can collaborate across a small group, across an entire organisation, and with third parties as well. It brings all of that information together in one place and gives you one source of the truth.
Excellent. So are we still using Excel?
We've just not had a chance to put Monday everywhere yet, and we will be testing it. And I suppose, to use your example of double sockets and single sockets, across the project management sphere, we have a range of projects of different sizes. We have a range of project managers with different skills. So some of our project managers may look at a problem and say, right, I need to put a breaker in for that, and I need it to be on a spur that's fused, and I need a double socket for it. Others may look at it and think, I'll just put 2 extension cables together and it'll all be fine. But that, again, it all depends entirely on the scope of the project that they're working on and the sort of values and complexity and everything else that's involved in it. Sometimes Excel genuinely is all that people need if they just need to keep track of a few minor parts of a project, and there's not very many complications to it, but typically our projects as a council, they're not that simple. So we are looking at a proper project management tool and how we can get everyone on board with it.
It's just then there's just one portal to search. That's all.
Yeah, that's absolutely what we're aiming for.
Thank you, Councillor Barton. Just a follow-up question on that is, in terms of sort of the different methodologies, approaches we're still using, is there a deliberate decision made at any point about which one to use, or is it still at the discretion of whoever's project it is?
So we'll provide guidance around the different approaches that are available, and we can provide examples to project managers of which methodology will be most appropriate to use in any given circumstance. Ultimately, it will be up to the project manager to apply their knowledge and skill to decide what approach is right for them. But whatever approach they adopt, it will be structured, there will be a way for them to report on it, there'll be consistency throughout and guidance and support available to help them through it.
Great, thank you. Members, any more questions? Okay, I'm just going to turn to then section 5. So, David, you've outlined 3 risks there very, very clearly, which I think are very important risks. Where are those being owned, and who's got a plan to make sure that actually we're putting in place the things that we need to make sure those are managed and resolved?
So currently, these risks, they will reside in the risk register for the corporate programme management team. They haven't existed anywhere specifically before within the service plan because we've never had a corporate team before, but it's that group that are taking ownership of these risks.
Okay, I think as we've got the leader here, could I ask that actually those go to cabinet at some point, not at a formal cabinet session, but I think they're really, I think it's a really good summary of actually some of the challenges that the council will face in delivering projects, and it might be worthwhile just spending a bit of time reviewing those to make sure we have got things in place to cover them. I think they deserve some really good focus.
So I've genuinely found this extremely useful and fascinating, and cogs flying all over the place on this one, so not quite sure what will come out of my mouth on this. Councillor King and I have for a long time felt that more systematic approach across the council's really valuable in this, because to be blunt, some officers have been enthusiastic, willing volunteers in this area because they don't have that expertise, and this is about bringing expertise to bear and The Excel point is you can do quite a lot with Excel, but you may miss things. So you may miss the risks, or the timeline may not be up, or the resources or something like that. So I'm really pleased with the way it's going. I do want to thank our Deputy Chief Exec he's done a helpful one-page questions to ask. Now, I don't know if you sent that just to Cabinet, but it may be that this committee might find that useful, because I've certainly found it in terms of strengthening the teams. And sorry, I know I've said what I thought was important about this thing, but not what you've said. What you've asked, there's a lot of work going on this, and in a way, I would like Dave Elkington to come back to this committee in the 6 months or 12 months, whichever you're asking, and set out how far it's got, and then ask the questions again. Is that reasonable? I'm ducking it now.
It's your cabinet. So I just think, from my perspective, I think this is a really, really good paper. And if I were looking at the risks there, I think the office has done a brilliant job of setting those out. And there are probably some actions that actually we need to make sure are in train. I would be looking at this thinking this is a really high priority piece that we should make sure Cabinet should at least be aware of, to make sure that those things are happening.
So just come back again, if I can, on the first one about resources. Councillor Chilvers has been very keen to make sure that projects move with pace, so that there is proper project management resource in to get the key, can't do it for everything, but the key projects done. The second one about contractors, I think sharpening this up does help. So it encourages the contractors to bring their sort of A-team to bear. And again, our Deputy Chief Exec has said perhaps one or two contractors have got a little bit too comfortable with us, and we need to make sure that they're on their toes and, you know, really batting hard for us. So we're trying to do what we can. Whether we're focusing on the bits you want or not, I don't know.
Thank you. Councillor Kohler, you want to come in?
One quick thought that's been spurred by that last exchange. My reading of these key risks is that this is really the start of a portfolio level risk register, and that therefore the request that I would personally make is that when we get the first sight of the portfolio dashboard, portfolio report, that's accompanied by a formal portfolio risk register, and that it gets handled that way. And in that way, it should come quite quickly by the sound of it.
I've certainly asked for each project to have risks attached to them, so you can see in the same place.
But just to be clear, a portfolio risk register is very different to that. So that's individual risks within the project. These are risks to how projects are being managed overall. So they are different risks, and it takes a while to get your head around the difference between portfolio, program and project risks. But yeah, different type of thing.
Thank you. I think we need a way to get you on the team. Thank you.
Councillor Melrose.
As whose job as a portfolio manager, I will see to that he understands Councillor Kohler.
Great, thank you, Councillor Kohler. I think that's a really good build. Mr. Elkington, I'm going to ask you about when you think is a good when is a good time to bring a report back around where we've got to a project management strategy and along with our portfolio of projects and risks.
Well, a lot of the items that are kind of covered in this report, they're in the corporate programme team's service plan for the first 6 months of the year. So if you give us 7 months to come back, given a few weeks in between for to write the report and everything else, we can bring it back to this committee then.
Brilliant, thank you. We'll sort out a date, but thank you, and thank you for all your work on the report. As I say, it was a really good read, and I think has provoked a good, constructive discussion as well here as well. So thank you. Right, I didn't give a time limit for that, but I was aiming for 20 minutes. I think we did it in 22, so that's good. Right, we're now on to items called in from the Cabinet. What I'm going to do on each of these is I'll come to them in turn I will ask for a quick introduction into the paper, and then I will invite the person who called the item in to actually start the discussion. I'm aiming for probably about 20 minutes each on each of these items. We may need to go longer on some, I'm aware. But again, just to keep the pace going and to keep us focused on what we're talking about, that would be good. So we're going to start off with item 7 on the Cabinet agenda, which is the events strategy, which was called in by Councillor Gorman, and the reasons for it to be considered were that events can have a significant impact on a large number of people. The equality impact assessment has not been fully completed, and disabled people only seem to have been considered in terms of those attending events. So that was the reason for the call-in. I'm going to ask, we've got Charlotte Sully and Martin O'Neill. We've also got Councillor Billy Eld here as well. So I'm going to hand over to officers first to see if they'd like to give us a brief introduction to the report.
Good evening, Chair. It's good to be here. So the report seeks approval from Cabinet for a new 4-year event strategy, which sets out how the Council will manage and support outdoor events in the district. The strategy sets out a framework for supporting, developing and promoting events, which will properly balance the desire to host events while also supporting the needs of existing communities and users of outdoor spaces.
Great. Thank you, Charlotte. Councillor Gorman, shall I come to you to start us off?
No, I have several questions, if that's okay, Chair. Okay. Was the final version of this strategy shared with environmental health and licensing?
Yes, I believe so, when they were part of the consultation.
Okay. So, and then we've had recent report training, both officers and councillors, that emphasise the need for equality impact assessments and for them to be carried out well. So why is the plan with this to consider the impact on equality after the strategy has already been agreed, and it only seems to be thinking about disabled people who are attending events rather than the impact on, say, surrounding residents?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Gorman. So we felt that we didn't want to complete the the equality impact assessment poorly and not include enough detail. We felt it needed greater research. We know from the outdoor events, most of them are not ticketed, so we don't know exactly who is attending our events or who is also in the area and is affected by the events. So in order for us to fully and comprehensively complete the equality impact assessment, we felt it would be beneficial to do some research into it. We've also planned to do some research anyway into the economic impact of events, the social impact of events, so we felt we could capture it really well and collect that data and complete it properly within that work.
I think, Councillor Gorman, the point that you're raising about people with disabilities who are not at the event is a really valid one that we probably haven't considered previously. And really that's the reason we share these reports with senior leadership team, members of the Cabinet, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, to bring that sort of insight to us. So whilst we will undertake equalities impact assessments, and we've spoken to the Equalities, Inclusion and Diversity Officer about this, personally I think we'd benefit from talking directly to you about some of those issues that we haven't captured in this report, such as people with disabilities who are not at the event and what we can do to consider their needs. I'm not saying that we can do everything that might be required, but we certainly wouldn't mind having a discussion with you about that if you'd be open to that.
I welcome that, thank you. So, final question. The strategy aims to increase the percentage of events that are commercial from 27% to 40%, but at the same time to not decrease the number of community events, and also talks about things like reducing the impact on communities having like a number of events, for example, not having events over consecutive days anymore, and reducing headlines events in parks. How does that work? How are those different aspects going to be balanced?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we feel we can increase them gradually over the next 4 years, because it is a 4-year strategy. We think we can do that through using other event spaces that we don't use as much or at all at the moment. We identified within the strategy that there are a number of opportunity areas coming up in the future, such as the stadium, a few others that I've listed in the strategy. So we think we might be able to increase the number of commercial events that we can do through those areas. So it's not about putting extra impact or loads of extra events into those areas that are already currently affected by them. It's about using other opportunity areas and other spaces. And I should also mention as well that it's not about, most of our events at the moment are focused on a small part of the year. So we've got the springtime right through up until about October, but we do think there is further opportunities available for us as a team to look at how we programme events across the winter period in particular, so that you might see some increase in events then when perhaps you might not expect it, but that's how we aim to do it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And building on the points that Councillor Gorman raised there, it's a fantastic report, and it's good to see the increase in the benefits to the community. Funds coming in will help towards general funds, so I understand that. And it's this, as Councillor Gorman mentioned, it's that balance between, the commercial opportunities and the revenues and the benefits is a great place to visit, but also we're thinking about residents at the same time. During the year, the last 2 or 3 years, there's been quite an increase. I realise this is strategy, but as long as it's sort of built up a bit on the risk, which mentions this is balancing community and commercial, key priority 3. We'll continue to generate some complaints, but the risk of not holding, and it seems to be dismissed quite quickly, but actually that is really important. So at some point in the future, I'd like to be thinking about, what are the mitigation measures? How, do we have a 24 helpline? Not a helpline, but, a phone number that's responded to in the event of noise. We can manage that quickly, because that's a key thing for us, that we can manage these risks quite, on a neighbourly level very, very promptly to make sure we've got the local residents on board with these events. Because by and large, they do support them, but it's that fine line which we really have to manage. And it's good to see we've got an appointment of an events assistant as well, so that's really promising. But yeah, it's just going forward how we manage those issues really, I guess. Thank you.
I'm not sure entirely I understood exactly what the question was, but I think probably just going off of what you've said, I think one of the key things that we can do better is to communicate why we do events, and to talk to residents and to talk to local people and to promote the events more, not just so people can come to them, but people understand we don't just put events on because it's a nice thing to go and see. We put events on because it helps to make the place vibrant and to support the local high streets and to support all of the town's businesses and to support everyone's well-being. So it's those kind of extra benefits that we can bring in that are both social and economic, that perhaps we're not entirely communicating to the best of our abilities at the moment, but that's something that I hope we can do more of in the future.
Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. We take noise complaints really, really seriously, and we know that they're going to come in because we've got some loud events that take place, and there are residents that live very close to St Nick's Park. We do everything we can to communicate to local residents what's happening. We work with environmental health officers on the science of the noise that I don't even begin to understand. I sat in meetings with our environmental health officers and the event organisers for the Warwick sessions last year, and just had to leave them to whatever it was they were talking about, because there's a whole science to it. It gets to a point where we will comply as a council with what our environmental health officers are telling us in terms of the maximum base levels, mid-range, because it's not just about the noise, it's the vibration and the impact that has on people. There was a point last year where the Warwick Sessions organisers were sort of saying, if we go much lower, then it ruins the whole experience, both for the artists and the audience. That said, we really want to work hard to minimise the impact. So whether there are other things that we can do, Charlotte, around screening in the parks to reduce those sorts of impacts, it's part of this strategy, and the strategy is there because we know chasing numbers of events and maximising the numbers of events is not the way we want to go. We want to make them better quality, so quality as well as quantity, and sort of, as Charlotte said, spread them out a bit so it's not one after another after another. Hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you. Councillor Barton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As someone that put his first event on in 1976, I could talk about events all night, but I won't. Just one thing on noise. I know I sit on licensing, and we've had several events come here for approval, and we've absolutely delved into their event plans with meticulous, minute detail, really nailing them down over noise. And since Charlotte started, I believe, in about 2022, something like that. I've worked closely with Charlotte and the events team, and they do an absolute excellent job in bringing life to our town. Now, I have, in the past, criticised them I used to call them the non-events team, because of the problems you used to have organising events. But I believe that Charlotte and the team do an absolute excellent job. You've only got to look at some of these things. It's about making our town viable, bringing stuff to the high street. You've only got to look at 3.3. The bowls and the Art in the Park brought what we think is 2.18 million, 40,000 attending over 2 days. Mighton Hospice, 71,000. We're supporting local charities and local businesses. But I am worried, I am concerned that I think, and it's the same with the previous subject we discussed about complaints. I'd like to ask Charlotte if she actually thinks that she is understaffed. How many staff have you got now? How many staff do you have in the summer? And have you got enough staff to manage these events? I know we do the event plan and we do this, we do that, and we do the other. And I know the events team work really closely with the Whitnash Lights this year, which is great. But do the events team have time to go to some of these events in the evenings just to see if they are actually doing what the event plan says, like noise, etc.? Do you actually attend? Is that a problem that you haven't got enough staff?
Thank you, Councillor Barton. It's a really good question. We know is the answer. We don't have a big enough team. The team, when it first started out in, I think it was 2010, it had about 60 events and there was 4 officers, so 3 events officers and a manager. We are still that same size, but we have 150 events now. Last year, we were fortunate enough to get an additional post, an events assistant post, just for a year. That person's now left. We're seeking to hopefully get that post agreed again for hopefully a 2-year period, but it's very difficult to manage the huge amount of events that we have on. We would love to go to lots of events. We'd love to go to all of them if we could. We don't. We all enjoy events and we do attend as many as we can, probably more in a personal capacity than an officer capacity, but we go out and do site visits when we can, but it's a very full-time job. The team all work really, really hard. They all have a lot of flexi hours built up, which is a problem in itself to take those hours. So there's a lot of paperwork that goes on behind the scenes, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done out on site, and it's just balancing the two. So ideally the team would be bigger, and then we would be able to deliver even more for the communities, but we work hard with what we've got.
Yeah, see, with things like Martin's Law coming along, that's another law that we've got to comply with. And if we just talk about staffing just for just a second, I was really shocked at the housing scrutiny meeting that we were up in the housing employees, the housing staff, by circa 40. Yet we're struggling on complaints and we're struggling on events. If we didn't have events, then I dread to think what would happen to this town. And it's not only events that other people put on. The events team put events on. I worked closely with Charlie over the 2 beacon lightings last year. They did the Commonwealth Games in 2022. And Armed Forces Day, they take a lot of interest in that. I do think that the events team is an important part of this council, and it should be funded because it brings into our town millions, and we can't ignore that. So I do plead with the Cabinet that they look at recruiting more staff, at least one more, for the events team. Thank you.
Councillor Melrose, I think you wanted to come in on that.
I'll just come very short and sweet. So the housing staff is funded by the housing revenue account. So that's a separate account to the general fund, this is where this role would be funded. And Councillor Chilvers would have probably answered this question if he wasn't sending some emails. We are looking into that in an additional post.
Great, thank you. Councillor Luckhurst, then Councillor Kohler.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief comment rather than a question. Just want to express my appreciation for Martin O'Neill about expressing the actual science of sound rather than just treating it as one blanket thing. The amount of people you come across who just treat sound as a universal thing and not taking into account bass and mid-range and treble. So yeah, thank you very much. Long may that continue. Thank you.
I forgot the treble.
Added that in.
Right, thank you. Councillor Kohler.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much. It's been a very interesting discussion. Thank you very much for everybody who's contributed. I've got one question, which was, do you produce an annual report of the benefits and I guess a summary of complaints about associated with the events that we put on? So you've listed out a few events where there's a quantifiable economic benefit to the area, but I'm sure there are others that have an economic benefit. You know, would building up a portfolio within an annual report to say, look, these are the events we put on, this is what we think the economic benefit to the district was at least this, direct benefit to the council was this, and let's be honest, here are the summary of the complaints that we received in doing these.
Thank you. It's a really good idea. I love the idea. I've seen it used before for very large commercial events. They will do, for example, the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, they will produce a very large economic impact and social impact report after that you'll see will go out and it'll be in the press and you'll see all the benefits from it. I don't know whether it would be possible for us to add that into our workload because it would probably fall to myself to do it, whether I would have the time to devote to that. I should mention, it was just the team we don't only manage events, we also manage all the markets in the towns and all the film and TV inquiries we get through, and if there's a protest happening in the district, we also get involved heavily in that, and we also manage the safety advisory group. So we've got quite a portfolio that we manage as a team. So if councillors thought it would be beneficial for us to do an end-of-year report or perhaps a 2-year report, then it's something we could look at, but we'd have to manage it with our workload.
Mr. O'Neill.
I think as a very supportive manager that could fall to me to do the end-of-year report, because about 5 years ago we did some economic impact assessments on 5 or 6 of our biggest events, which is kind of where we want to capture all that data. This did come to me on a sad weekend at home about 2 months ago, that we haven't got brilliant marketing of the events that we do and the economic development that we do. I hope you've all recently seen the economic development update that's going out every couple of months. But there's a lot more we can do about marketing events. There's a lot more we can do to fight our corner, really. Just as Councillor Barton pointed out, if we show the worth of the team and what we're bringing in terms of not just money and footfall and those economic metrics, but the enjoyment that it brings. So we want someone standing on the park doing a qualitative assessment as well to assess the happiness that the events bring. If we can do that, we're going to have a go. But I'll take that one away.
Thank you. And I possibly should have spelt it out more clearly. Part of the reason for suggesting it is so you can justify to Cabinet why you need a bigger team.
Thank you, Councillor Kohler. Councillor Harrison.
The question, I hope it's still working. Bit of a hazard there. Anyway, very quick one, just regarding the rollout. I think it's important that we look at consultation with the residents as well, because I recognise it benefits visitors coming in, but also we need to keep mindful of our residents' thoughts are. Obviously, there's benefits to the community, but we need to keep a real close eye on what the general feeling is within, whether it's Leamington or Widnes or Warwick, wherever the event's being held. How do residents just get their views on? So I think regular consultations are a good idea as well. I know there's cost, but I think it'd be worthwhile. God, I can't believe this is still working. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Members, anything else? Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry to jump in at the end. It's a very quick one about the safety advisory groups that you mentioned. Please, just reading the policies appendix. It talks about the SAGs there, and it says they aren't formal bodies with official legal responsibilities, but essentially they're giving informal advice to events organisers. And I know there's been a little bit of controversy about how these are working at Stoneleigh Park, which obviously does a large number of events and they're large-scale events. If the SAGs are giving only informal advice, is anyone checking how often that advice is being taken up and followed? Is there anyone to check compliance with guidance on safety?
Perhaps the report's unclear. I will look at it again, but the Safety Advisory Group gives the members of the Safety Advisory Group are officers of the council and also the core members of the police, the fire service, the ambulance service. So it's a cross-section of expertise, and they will scrutinise event plans, both that happen within Warwick District Council's area and in our park, so events that we cover as a team, but also events that happen in other venues like Warwick Castle, like Stoneleigh Park that you mentioned. So no, I wouldn't say there is another organisation that scrutinises the SAG. The SAG is the scrutinising body, if that is. Does that answer your question?
Sorry, just in terms because of the controversy that's I know has happened with some of this at Stoneleigh Park. The question was just asking if you're giving informal advice about health and safety and the legal responsibilities with the private sector organisation doing the event. After you've given the advice, is anyone from the SAG following up whether it's been followed and taken on board or not? Because from what the paper's saying, they could simply choose not to follow it. And the legal responsibility would be with the private events organiser.
I think, again, this comes down to resources. So we meet as a SAG usually once a month, sometimes twice a month. We'll have 2-hour-long meetings. We'll talk about 3-4 events during that meeting. We don't, as a policy, keep following up on the actions and the actions that we give out. If we have any concerns over events, which we sometimes do, they will have a second SAG meeting, a third SAG meeting, however many it takes. And if we are completely unhappy with it, this happened last year, I won't share which event, it got cancelled because we were so strong in our recommendations that we gave them. So when we need to, we can act, but no, there isn't anyone doing that.
Great, thank you, Councillor Payne. Thank you. I'm going to wrap that up. Thank you very much. Thought that was a really good discussion. members, can I suggest some comments to Cabinet? So I would suggest we obviously thank officers for their work on the report, highlight that, oh, sorry, Councillor Billiard.
Thank you, Chair. So I'd just like to add a few points. Thank you, Councillor Gorman, for calling this in. So if I could just add that during the application process, which event organisers need to all undertake, which with careful support from our officer team, there are guidelines to take into consideration the needs of attendees, particularly those with SEND, special educational needs and disabilities. So many events do provide a quiet space already or are British Sign Language interpreters. So these things are already in place. Regarding the noise, there will always be noise when people get together. It is part of it. I totally understand the noise surrounding music. Wind can affect the sound. The style of music can affect it. The quality of the music can also affect the level of noise. So careful consideration is needed when people are applying to hold an event, which you already work closely with them, don't you? Just to mention as well about commercial and local events, we have carefully considered the balance of these, ensuring towns retain their individuality and warmth, which is crucial. Yes, there are complaints, but our officers do receive a lot of positive feedback, which often isn't mentioned here. And thank you, Councillor Barton, for thanking our team, because they work under pressure, particularly from spring right through until the autumn, and then, well, the end of summer, and then they get possibly a few weeks, and then it's Diwali, all the Christmas events, the VE Day, all those events they do. So I'd like to thank Charlotte and her team, and you are doing a superb job. And this event strategy is amazing, so thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Billiard. So, we're just summing up, I think, some comments back to Cabinet. I think we should thank officers for their work on the report, obviously. I think highlight that members recognise the value that events bring to our district, and we would support the need for additional resource within the team to make that even more effective. Committee would also welcome periodic reporting of the economic and social impact of events on our district. And I think it's also, right to, I think we should send a comment back that actually there were some concerns raised about the impact on our residents of the increased number of events that we might have, and actually making sure that we're equally considering those people who aren't attending the events as we are those who are attending them as well. So if members are happy with those as a set of comments. Councillor Barton.
Yeah, I've just got one thing. We don't want to burn the existing staff out. They say they do 40 hours. I bet they bloody don't do 40 hours. I bet they do more than 40 hours. So we don't want to burn them out.
Thank you, Councillor Barton. I will make sure that is recorded as well. Right, okay, members. If members are happy with those as a set of comments, we shall move on. Thank you very much. Right, thank you. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, should you wish. But we're doing quite well in 20-minute bursts at the moment. So, right, we're now going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is again a cabinet item that's been called in, which is item 8. The annual emissions reporting and carbon offsetting, which is called in by Councillor Kohler to better understand emissions projections and the management of the programme. And I think here we have Mr. Graham Folk-Skinner, Tim Hornsby, David Elkington and Councillor Williams. Who would like to kick us off? Is that you, Graham? Graham, okay, over to you. And again, we'll try and do a sort of 20-minute burst on this as well.
Thank you, Chair. One of the first things I would like to just comment on was what Councillor Day said right at the beginning, and the fact that you as councillors get a whopping great pile of paper. I mean, my experience as an officer getting feedback is encouraging and is constructive, so I want to thank you for that, because they're a balance between being constructive and also pressing, so thank you very much. So that's my experience. I just wanted to comment on that. Yeah, this report is, a couple of years ago we were
committed to, as a climate change team, to report back on emissions. It was an annual thing that we committed to. We are slightly late on that because I think it was due last, in theory, in November. What we made the decision to do was combine the annual emissions reporting with the subject of carbon offsetting. And we thought, because they were inextricably linked, we thought we'd put them together, hence the slight delay. So what this report is asking is that, first of all, to make note of the emissions reduction, but also asking for a way forward. We go from a target-based approach to carbon emissions to a trend-based approach, and we're seeking the permission to go forward and looking at insetting rather than offsetting. So the commitment here is that we'll use the low-cost, low-carbon program board to sort of drill down into the detail and come back in November time to actually report back as to how we're actually going to do it. But there's a lot of advantages in an insetting approach to an offsetting approach. And yeah, that's the crux of the report. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Graham. Members, questions? Councillor Kohler, I'll start with you, obviously, because you called the report in.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the report and all of the appendices. I guess, could you just talk a bit about, I mean, obviously the recommendation says to replace the current target-based approach, and obviously the current targets are very simplistic, with a trend-based approach. Could you just talk a bit more around that? Because in searching for kind of trend-based approach through the document, I didn't really find a succinct explanation of what we meant by that. Is it kind of an annual percentage reduction that we're going for, or is it a bit looser than that?
Yeah, that's what we want to sort out. That's what we want to do. It's going to be a trend-based approach, but we want to sort out whether we report back annually on that or whatever it may be. That's what we need to establish.
Okay. I mean, I'm heartily in favour of annual reporting. I have to say, I think if I may say so, the table that was included in the Q&A, it's described here as Table 3, Organisational Carbon Emissions, and then it breaks it down by Scope 1, 2, 3 on an annual basis. It's a very simple kind of trend, but it gives a very clear picture of where we are and where we're heading, hopefully, if you extrapolate. But you know, I'd be very much in favour of retaining that kind of report and basing everything else kind of around it. Is that the kind of feedback that you're looking for in here?
Indeed, but also we need to note that we've moved away, as much as we want to keep those, a report that I sent you in the Q&A, that's the organisational emissions, and we're going to keep that, so that is still important. But what the emphasis has moved to the indicators on the low cost, low carbon. So we've moved the emphasis. We're still going to be recording the organisational Scope 1 to 3 emissions, but we're shifting away from that as a focus.
Right. So in terms of, I guess when we set it up, there was the Climate Change Action Programme, and Dave Barber was clearly in as the director of programme, the Climate Programme Change Programme, say the words. So it sounds like we're kind of, are we at risk of losing the focus outside of the low cost, low carbon energy programme? Sounds like we've kind of got that programme, which does take over a significant amount, and it's kind of expanding the scope of what was being done, because it's obviously going into council houses and everything like that. So that's all good, but are we at risk of losing some of the other aspects that were captured by the Climate Change Action Programme?
Well, from my point of view, no, in the fact that they're either going to be in the corporate strategy or they're going to be in service area plans, so that we're not losing them, no. I mean, they'll be maintained in other ways.
Okay, so I think, therefore, we're at least, well, I at least in terms of when I'm thinking about stuff with the climate change hat on, we're at risk of losing visibility of them then. Is that the point? Because if they're over in a service area plan, they're no longer going to get an annual report to themselves that says this is what's going on around climate change across the council. And that was always the original objective, was to put something in place that runs across the council, across everything that we do. And if things are just going to get down into the service area plans, you're not going to have that overarching view outside of having an annual update of your emissions.
I don't know whether somebody else can do it more eloquently than me, so I'll hand over.
We will still be able to, through the service area plans and all the actions that get tracked, they, as you know, they have performance indicators set out within them. We will still be able to clearly identify which one of those performance indicators are related to climate initiatives, and we'll still be able to pull them together so you can have an annual overview of what's happening.
Thank you. I guess the other question that I'd got in my head was around... Sorry, Councillor Williams.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the questions. If I could just try to frame this, if this helps at all. In the previous Climate Change Action Programme, there was a lot of ambition, but there was ambition without delivery, and ambition without delivery is aspiration. And what we've tried to focus on is actually developing a delivery and investment programme on tangible actions which we can invest in and in which we can monitor. So, as was reported on the 9th of July and on the 27th of November, when we reviewed the Council's corporate strategy and updated it, what we tried to do is create a tighter focus of deliverable actions that we can oversee as a council. So what you have is you have two levels of scrutiny of this. You have a project by project level where we look at the capital revenue cost, predicted carbon reduction savings, predicted energy savings, value for money, milestones, etc., on activities which we can actually deliver. And that's then reviewed through the Low Cost, Low Carbon Programme Board and through the Advisory Committee. And we then collectively look at the sum of those activities. So we can measure the sum of what we're setting out to do. Are we doing it? Are we not doing it? Are we doing it successfully? So that's the change of emphasis. The wider way in which we look at the councils as a whole, and the scope 1, 2, 3 is not gone, it's not disappeared, it's just the focus is, the emphasis has gone on to the projects which we can actually deliver. And then, as Graham said at the outset, we recognise that ambition, the prior ambition, is not achievable within the life of this council. So what we are looking to do is to supplement that with an in-setting approach which has an impact locally, which we'll come on to. So this is a change of emphasis, bringing more rigour into programmes that we can deliver. That's the purpose of what we're doing here. It's not A rather than B, it's a different approach. And I hope that helps.
Councillor Kohler?
Thank you. I get the second kind of area I just wanted to explore a little bit was you very kindly shared the details of both the programme board members and the roles and responsibilities of the supporting officers. I guess we're describing it as a programme. Who is the programme manager? Who is responsible for delivering the benefits that are associated with the programme?
Yes, I wasn't able in the time to give you a full response to that because what we're going to have to do is coordinate across the council. So it's not going to be just the climate change team, it's going to be involving other teams as well. From a point of view of ultimate leader, I have a look into my right, I think, as regards to strategic director, I would assume.
So, Mr. Helkington, it sounds like you are both a member of the programme board, but also the key person making sure that the overall programme is staying on track and achieving the benefits that are anticipated in the programme. Is that right?
It would appear that way. Yeah, that is, so I suppose within I suppose it's important to recognise here the strategic director role that I've got now included the duties that Dave Barber used to undertake as programme director. So making sure that we stay on track with our climate commitments, again, through the work that Graham and his team do, through the work of the Low Cost, Low Carbon Board, we will make sure that we still track our ambitions, that there is someone who can be held accountable for them and come back to this group and report back on progress on a regular basis.
Councillor Davison.
Sorry, I hope I'm not misinterpreting what you're saying, Councillor Kohler, but the plan we have at the moment is the corporate strategy, and below that, the service area plans. So when we say the Climate Change Action Programme has been incorporated into the corporate strategy, we mean that. So you're talking history in terms of a Climate Change Action Programme. It's now the corporate strategy that we're trying to follow. I think all this council are very well aware that we are ambitious overall, all parties, but there's limited scope for doing things. And to be blunt, a lot of the things in the previous plan were aspirational, and years later, when we looked at them, nothing had happened. So the question is, do you carry on, or do you say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to focus on things that we think we can make a measurable impact, particularly reducing energy bills for residents. So that's where we're focusing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. I guess I'm slightly confused in terms of, because obviously the corporate strategy covers everything that you're doing, so that equates to the portfolio of what you're doing. And we're still describing it as a programme board, so I'm still assuming that there's a programme focused on what we're doing around climate change in terms of reducing emissions. And I presume that even if we've obviously the old net zero target of 2025, that's history. But I assume that we would still have a overall net zero ambition. I mean, that's kind of first ambition. Second ambition would be to go net negative, I would have hoped. But so a first ambition of net zero, and I understand change that we're going to go for a trend-based approach, and we're going to focus on trying to do a load of insetting. I hate the term, but I understand the principle, and I think I broadly support the principle. So from that perspective, those building blocks sound reasonable enough. It's a question of then, okay, so we're kind of abandoning the very simplistic target of net zero for Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions by 2025. I feel we still need to have a kind of a stake, a flag somewhere down the road to say, okay, overall we want to be net zero by such and such a time. And yeah, we may hit it, we may not hit it, but I think it's good to have a direction that we're travelling in, a true north, as some American colleagues would say.
Right, Councillor Davidson, I think that's coming
Yes, I mean, just again in terms of, sorry if I'm sounding pedantic here, but with the programme board, it does say low cost, low carbon, should have the word energy on it, programme board. So that's the board we're talking about. And Councillor Williams is portfolio holder for decarbonisation. So that's the focus we're doing. It doesn't mean everything else has been forgotten. And some bits will be in service area plans if they're still important, but we haven't put them on the actual corporate strategy. I don't think you want us to go down that little bit. I think what you're saying is you want a number to hit, and we've pushed away from that. We want to see results, and I'm delighted the results. Traditionally, I'd thank Councillor Williams for it, but it's really the officers over here at the front who are very quiet who've done all the work. And in terms of reducing carbon emissions with solar panels and lots of other stuff. And it's not just sticking them on roofs, it's lots of highly technical stuff going on there. So I'm really pleased with that. So yes, the bit I was going to say on targets is it is hard, and those figures, the table, are nice and simple, but you know as well as I do that most of the impact on that is not our efforts or our officers' efforts. It's things like the carbon density of the electricity supply and so on. So they are a bit moving feast-like. I think this is a brilliant segue into the next item, in that in terms of doing ambitions, do we go for passive house? Do we not? Those are the real decisions. And I'm not sure whether having a target or not helps. It's whether we feel as a council it's important enough to put money into something like Passive House to reduce carbon emissions. And again, the officers, and Councillor Williams actually knows it better than me, in terms of where we get bang for our buck in terms of reducing carbon emissions. So we're talking much more in terms of cost effectiveness or value for money than when the end date is. But yeah, we're all really keen to get to zero carbon as a council. It's just incredibly hard.
Then if I can just say...
Sorry, just quickly, we're sort of 15 minutes in. I've still got 2 more councillors to come, so if you could make it really quick, Councillor Williams.
So we have more targets than we had before, but the targets are deliverable linked to specific activity. So there is more rigour in this rather than less rigour. So rather than having a figure plucked out of the sky. And the other thing that Tim and others will say is that is a moving target, because each time we have a deliverable scheme, we can fund it, we can invest in it, then that's added to the programme board. So anybody's welcome to come to the programme board and see the rigour at which the performance in each and every one of those schemes is monitored.
Thank you.
Gosh, I'd be delighted to take you up on an offer of a seat on or a visitor's seat on the programme board. That sounds most enticing.
Well, it's a very serious discussion, because we've had a poll around about who can make which meetings and not which meetings, and there may well be a case to have to just collapse it into one. So, but that's a discussion which is live with the strategic director and the leader now.
So I guess I'll try one last time. But I guess my point is, and I think I take on board exactly what you say about having very specific targets for the individual projects that you're doing, and I totally get that. But I still think that having some kind of projection into the future, even if you say, right, it's a range of dates that we say sometime in the 2030s or something like that, hopefully you can get a bit narrower than that and say, look, in 2035, give or take 3 years, if we keep doing what we're doing, we think we will achieve net zero.
Tim.
I think, I'll jump in here. The problem we have is the amount of money that is required to meet net zero is vast, and it's not possible without huge investment from government, and the problem is that investment has dried up. So for us to commit to a net zero target, whenever that may be, only leaves us at the risk of missing that target, just like we have done the most recent one. Essentially, the projects we've done so far are really the low-hanging fruit. These are the ones, the easiest to get people on board with, the easiest to fund. Most of them generate revenue. And even at the cost we're paying, we are still paying quite a lot per tonne of carbon saved over the course of a lifetime of a project, specifically with solar. So actually, they're a drop in the ocean. I'm not saying we haven't made great progress, but to push back a target that we've just missed by, let's say, another 10 years, knowing full well that as just carrying on what we're doing, we're not going to meet it. We need serious money to meet that target. I think at the moment isn't the right approach.
So let me try and rephrase it slightly. So I think what you're saying is that given our current level of resourcing, we are never going to hit net zero. Even after the grid has been totally decarbonised, so all of that's taken care of for us. There are some emissions that we just, if we keep doing what we're doing, we are never going to be able to eliminate. And I think that would be a really useful thing to say, because it would focus minds and say, okay, well, look, as a community, we need to. So therefore, if it's going to take more investment, then we need to talk about how we can raise that investment. But I think just saying that we're not saying anything in the area, I think is missing the opportunity to have a very constructive, if difficult, conversation.
Sorry, Tim, I think Councillor Davison wants to come in.
Yes, Tim's done excellently, done huge calculations in terms of value for money and so on, and some he's told us quite bluntly are not worth doing, or are worth doing if there happens to be a grant, at least in terms of Warwick District, so has set up things for grants. And in terms of that, probably we've done as much as is sensible at the moment in terms of civic buildings, which is why the paper is on insetting and pivoting more to reducing energy bills and carbon emissions for residents, particularly council tenants. And you will then say, obviously, well, how much will that deliver? And that is why the paper is saying we don't know yet, but there are industry standards, and I think the paper's saying in about 6 months' time, we hope we have a methodology where we can work that out. And the wave 3, I think I've got the term right, in terms of decarbonisation of council homes, is beginning to collect data on how much it costs to save carbon in our council houses. So my blunt answer to your question about when would we get to net zero, if you include insetting, is I don't know yet. I hope I'll have an estimate in 6 months' time.
Excellent, thank you. That's most helpful. I guess I am concerned that, great that we'll have an annual report. Great if we can scour across the whole corporation for things that are contributing to reducing climate change. I'd just love there to be a bit more formality around the programme management of how we go about that, and put some rigour into it as we go into the just around this slice of the corporate strategy, to try and make sure that they are pulling in the same direction, and that they are being treated as seriously as all the council would want them to be treated. So that's my plea.
Thank you, Councillor Goda.
Just to say, the review of the current arrangements is underway, so the rigour that you're seeking on the reporting and the management, that will be in place, will enhance what we've already got.
Fantastic, thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Right, I've still got, I think, 2 councillors to come in on this, so if I could ask you to be quick. I think Councillor Barton, did you still want to come in?
Yeah, I'll turn it more into a comment than a question. 1.3.4, in 2024, an error on the gas meter at Allspa Centre was identified, blah, blah. If it wasn't metering enough, surely in 24, the carbon emissions dropped considerably because the meter was wrong, and then only increased in 2025 to what it was in 2023. So surely that there's a graph there that one nulls out the other. And the other thing, it's a bit more about report writing and me being simplistic. 1.34 says organisational emissions have increased. Then in 1.3.5, total gross emissions have fallen. As a simple person, I can't weigh those two things up. In 0.4, you're saying it's increased. In 0.5, you're saying it's decreased. It just needs a little bit more explanation, I suppose. I don't know. I'm just simple. That's all. And it says in 141, continue on a downward trend. It was just a comment, really. I won't ask you a question.
Thank you, Councillor Barton. So I'll come to Councillor Harrison, and then we'll wrap up, I think. Councillor Harrison, are you coming in? Or are you going to throw your water
Yes, I'm just trying to remember exactly. I've got so many documents over here. It's been such a wide subject. But yes, I remember anyway. It's regarding, and it leads in from the conversation we had about setting targets and the risk of setting targets. But I noticed in the, of course, I've got the right term. It's in the bottom of Appendix 1, which is all the indicators. And I guess part of this is the fact that some of these indicators are more expensive and harder to measure. It's the fact that the key one is the total annual district carbon emissions, which I guess is total, including our buildings, residential houses, the lot. We've only got the figure for 2021-22. We haven't since then had a figure. I'm suspecting maybe it's quite a big exercise itself to measure that. But I was wondering, that is quite to me, one of the main measures anyway. Thanks.
Scattering it. Yeah, the information that we were getting that from is now no longer, it was used to be called scatter. It's no longer scatter. That's gone by the wayside, so we're having to use the thing DESNES data. So that's the reason for the gap. But we have, it's not in here, but we have got that. We're swapping data sets, but we can come up to date, but it's a different set of data. So.
Right, thank you.
Just to add to that as well, there's a delay on that data, there's a lag. So next year we will have the 2023 data. So there's always a 2 or 3 year delay, is that correct?
Yeah.
Also with the gas meter, they in the financial year 2024, so it was reported in that this year, so in this report, it was on the utility side, there was a gas bypass valve that we had no idea. So we were being undercharged for our gas at the Royal Spa Centre for a decade. And, yeah? Yeah. And then it jumped. And so that was a real shame for us because we'd worked really hard on dropping these emissions and changing the lighting, and then all our hard work was undone overnight. Thank you.
If I could just say on that, that doesn't say that in this report. I got the impression in 2024 the gas meter was an error. I just thought that was just for 12 months. So, a bit of, yeah. Did we end up with a big gas bill then? No wonder the Spa Centre was making so much money.
Right, great. Thank you, members. I think in terms of comments, I think for this is probably a thank officers for their work on the report. And I can feed back some of the discussion at Cabinet on Thursday. Okay, right. Well, let's move on to the last substantive item, which is item 17 from the Cabinet agenda, which is the Kenilworth school sites, which again was called in by Councillor Kohler to better understand the public benefits of the scheme. So we have David Elkington, Becky Burridge and Becky North and Councillor Melrose. Thank you, officers, particularly for being patient through quite a long evening. I'm sorry that you're on at the end. It's just the luck of the draw, I'm afraid. But I'm going to ask... sorry. Yeah, and Darren has quite rightly reminded me there is a commercial appendix, a confidential appendix to this, which relates to the commercials, which we need to be careful not to stray into. If we do, we will go into confidential session. But I am also thankful to officers for making efforts to put as much of this into the public domain as possible. That has been a fairly frequent refrain from this committee as well, so I appreciate that it's being heard. So, Councillor Melrose, I come to you.
Thank you, Chair. And you stole 5 sentences off my speech. So I'm here to set the paper out now. I'm just going to set something clear because there is an open planning consultation at the moment. And I just want to say it clear, this is around the sale of Lays Lane site if strict permissions and conditions are met. Planning permission has not been granted, the design isn't final, and any planning application will be publicly consulted on and go through the normal process. So that bit goes out the door. I want to thank officers, so I'll repeat Councillor Milton about getting as much information as possible in the public domain. This has been a fast-moving project. I think I blink and it changes, and it's important to recognise the effort. So I just wanted to set the bigger picture of considering the approach this paper is recommending. First is the site is costing, obviously, in interest payments and maintenance. Second is the land is allocated in the local plan and a part of the council's legal duty to maintain a 5-year land supply. So if we do not deliver on these sites, we reduce our 5-year land supply, which means the increases of its speculative application, which I'm sure we've seen across the district, including the one just round the corner from Ramsar Lane, I think 2 weeks ago. I'm going to look at Councillor Milton to confirm that. And the third is the delivery approach. This delivery approach is the fastest way to deliver houses. I think we all know we have a target of 2031. And we are obviously at risk of a grant which was to help the schools move locations at the time. So the paper sets out how we got here. I still remain committed, as I said in my speech in October, to have a lessons learned later in the year, but you're appreciating delivery first and then lessons learnt. If members want to discuss detailed numbers, as you've already stated, please let's go into confidential session because we're in that negotiating process. And I just want to make members aware, if they hadn't heard, and express my thanks for those who attended last week's resident meeting set up by Councillor Dixons and Hales. And I just wanted to let the members of the committee know it was around demolition, construction impacts, traffic, environmental migration and timelines. We are addressing these via the frequently asked questions and will continue to hold engagement with the residents. Thank you. I'll pass over to Councillor Chilvers because he wants to discuss the monies.
Go on, Councillor Chilvers.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to briefly comment on the finances of this in terms of the HRA, because obviously the finance overall has been very difficult, and we can talk about that in the confidential session if needs be. But the HRA report that is coming does give me a lot more confidence about that, in that the school sites budgets are completely reflected in the HRA apart from the sale receipt. So they work even without, the HRA now works even without the sale receipt. And so that gives us a bit of room in the HRA, which helps me sleep easier at night, certainly. And then the other thing to say, which I think is positive, is on the LGI contribution on the school sites, which started off, as you know, as like big indicative buckets. And now through this process, we're beginning to really refine what the drawdown for the school sites will need to be. And so obviously it's a lot lower than that indicative big bucket. And I want to carry on sort of driving through to make sure we really sort of firm up that figure, which again, we can talk about in the confidential session if you wish. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kohler, I'll come to you as the author of the call-in.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much to officers for just how much of the report is in the open. Having a confidential appendix and squirreling the secret information in there is fantastic, and I shall not go near that. So I shall endeavour to stay in public session, though please shout at me if I stray. I'll try not to. Start with a clarification, if I may. So recommendation 2C says savings on abnormal costs will be returned to WDC on a shared basis. And then paragraph 2.7.1 says land value is assessed on a residual basis with abnormal costs, ... and adjustments are made to reflect specification uplifts. So the clarification is just to confirm that Passive House obviously has higher build costs and that impacts the land value, and that any savings on those projected costs, additional costs, would then be returned to WDC as part of the savings. Have I understood that correctly?
No. That isn't what is meant by that. So abnormals is referring to abnormal costs specifically for the site development. So actually, I think the phrasing and using of abnormals in the recommendations is perhaps a little bit misleading, because I think it's that the abnormals associated with this site, or the additional costs where we're looking at that may come back to the council, are around demolition. They're costs that are associated with SIL and Section 106 and areas like that. It's not to do with specification upgrades.
So to add to that, the arrangement that we're working on at the moment with Homes England, who are obviously interested in the site, and that's in the public element of the report. Those abnormal costs are fed into their assumptions of to generate a residual land value, which will eventually lead to an offer. They have indicated that they don't believe that all of those abnormal costs are what they will actually incur. So the arrangement that we are trying to get to with them is that if, say, for example, demolition costs, we had an abnormal value of £2 million, but they actually managed to demolish the site for £1 million, then we would get a share of that difference back, in addition to the money that we've received for the sale of the site.
Thank you, that's very clear. So where I strayed was thinking that the additional costs of Passive House would be considered as part of those abnormal costs. Those additional costs, those are more well known and therefore are not subject to this kind of clawback.
Yeah. So, yeah, and just so that I suppose Homes England are basing their offer on worst case scenarios for these.
Thank you very much for that clarification. So the report makes it clear, well, reasonably clear, that 10% Passive House, though can I just question, because is it 10% or is it 9%? I guess we've been in trouble before about not being precise about these things, so is it 10 or is it 9?
It is just below 10%. They're proposing 20 Passive House units, which I rounded up to 10%.
Right, so it's 9. Right, okay. And then 10% are what's described as above net zero DPD. So presumably the other 80% are net zero DPD. Is that the standard of the other 80? Is that correct?
Yeah, that is the minimum standard that any new dwellings would have to be built to in the district.
Good, I understood that bit. That was great. So in terms of the affordable housing, is that taking over the 10% passive, the 10% above net zero, and then half of the affordable coming from the 80%, or is the affordable all coming from the 80%?
So it will ultimately depend on who purchases and brings forward the site, how they model and work it through, I suppose, in terms of what they're trying to seek in for gross development value, because they may get more value by putting it the passive house and the net zero carbon plus octopus or plus a zero bills approach. They may get a higher GDV from that being the open market dwellings and gross development value on the open market dwellings rather than it being the affordable. So I think that would be something that would be worked through at that point. I think it's quite difficult to stipulate. I think if you said that they all had to be affordable, that would probably drive down the residual land value, because the amount the council or an RP would pay for an affordable house is significantly less than the open market would. So it would really, reduce the value of that site.
Understood. I guess I don't know if it's a catch-22 or an irony or something, but we're saying that it's quite, I don't know whether it's likely or not, but it's possible that the affordable houses will have the highest running costs.
I think with that, it's too early to say at this point, so there's still a long way to go before we get to those finer details of exactly how we would break up our affordable mix and which units they would specifically apply to. I mean, we couldn't tell you anything right now with a degree of certainty of saying, you'll definitely get this amount as affordable from that passive selection. It's something that we still have to work on.
And it sounds like it will be largely up to the developer to determine where they come from. Is that right?
The developer has obviously they have a big interest in the financials of the site and how affordable it is. But again, we have our own mechanisms within WDC, so things like the local growth initiatives to help support that kind of work. So if we choose to buy some of these units in the future and that incurs a markup, that again will be up to us as a council, and it's a detail that we will have to work out when the information becomes available to make a judgment on it.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Kohler, can I just come to Councillor Williams, who's been trying to come in?
Thank you for the question. I think it's a really excellent line of inquiry and one which we're really well cited on. And I'm happy to say publicly that what you're saying makes absolute sense. We would like some of these higher spec houses to be social houses, so you can, that those families who find the bills most challenging are presented with the most beneficial opportunity. That hasn't been worked through. It might even be helpful if this overview scrutiny committee challenged the cabinet to do the best they can on that particular issue, because it is a difficult one, as you say, about where you sit between the economic benefit to the council and the benefit to the residents, and where that sweet spot is. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. I was going to try and suggest a solution, which was there was a press release from an organisation, a charity called Nesta, on the 20th of January this year, that was projecting that houses built to building regs, so not to our net zero DPD, but to national building regs, that had solar panels, a battery and a heat pump, the annual bills for those, they modelled it, would go from, instead of 1,670 for a property with none of those, would be around 670. So that sounds like very equivalent savings that you're trying to achieve with the passive house. And that's not an isolated report. I noted that MCS Foundation had a press release back in August 24, which said almost exactly word for word the same thing. So in terms of the other 80% of the properties on this site, or 81%, is it possible that we could try and insist that they they have that triumvirate of assets built into them, so a heat pump, solar panels and a battery.
To meet our adopted DPD standards, you already have to have quite a significant amount of those things. You wouldn't have necessarily a battery storage, but you would certainly have to have some sort of either PV or air source heat pump, definitely, to be able to even achieve and meet our standards, because we, as an authority, we do have higher than building reg standards, so we do deliver already well above that. So we are, and you know, we are recognised as an authority as being, you know, quite advanced in that compared to other authorities in what we're seeking. So we're already achieving, you know, above what's out there. So I think what we're seeking on the other dwellings is even more than that. Is essentially trialling and seeing what that can deliver, what benefits that can deliver for those occupants.
Thank you. I guess I'd be very interested to know what the portfolio holder thinks in terms of trying to push it, because I absolutely accept what you say. I think the net zero DPD is written in a way that it doesn't mandate a technology. It just says it shouldn't be connected to a fossil fuel grid, for example, which heavily implies a heat pump, but it doesn't mandate it specifically. That's it's a couple of years since I've read it, so that's how I think it's structured. But you're right, it definitely doesn't say anything about batteries. I think it doesn't even say anything about photovoltaic panels, but it seems that it would be very sensible for us to, since we're in the driving seat of this, you know, it's our site at the moment, we can hopefully specify some terms. We're definitely trying to in saying passive house and net zero DPD plus. So could we just have a blanket kind of floor, raise the floor, and then that would get round the issue with the affordable houses. It would say that, you know, the affordable houses could be any mix that seems appropriate, because we're pushing the bills right down across the whole estate.
I think in terms of that, it's down to financial viability of doing that. So realistically, the more layers you add on, the less viable or the less market interest there is going to be in that site. So ultimately, Homes England have done soft market testing to understand where would be a comfortable level for developers to enter into, where they'd actually get interest and people wanting to buy the site. Because if you think about it, they're essentially looking at purchasing the site. It's a risk to them taking on the site. If they're taking it on with additional requirements and specification, they need to know that there's a market there to sell it to, and that there's a developer that's there willing to take it on. I think you know, if we apply too many layers and too many requirements, it will actually stymie development and it wouldn't come forward at all. So I think we have to balance what the market's capable of doing versus, with our aspirations as a council, and finding that sort of sweet spot is quite difficult. So originally, when we looked at the options appraisal, we were looking for more than potentially what the offer has come in at, but we've had to sort of take a step back from that and really understand what the market is currently capable of delivering.
I mean, personally speaking, I'd be very interested to see if there was a model where we kind of scrap the passive house and the net zero plus and just go for this floor everywhere, focus on lowering the bills, low cost energy, in terms of insisting on a heat pump, solar panels and a battery storage, and appropriately scaled to each dwelling, and see whether that meets the viability test that you have for the site.
I think effectively, sorry, coming in again, effectively what you're suggesting there is the net zero carbon plus octopus zero bills. So that would be extremely expensive to do over the entire site, because that is what that suggests. That includes PV, air source heat pump and battery storage. That is the only way you can achieve net zero carbon and zero bills. And even then, you've got to get the thermal fabric soaked to a certain level to be able to actually achieve zero. And that zero is quite sort of subjective, because it's all down to how the individual uses their home as well.
Councillor Williams.
And can I just remind the committee that we actually took advice from Sir Randall on this. We paid for that very careful advice. It's set out openly in this report at sections 1.3.6, 1.3.7, 1.3.8, which I think makes the case why the investment in passive house, particularly over the lifetime costs, is actually a more beneficial way to go forward. And that's why we paid for that external advice to provide us with that direction.
Councillor Melrose.
Just because Councillor Collar asked for my opinion, I think Becky Burridge took the words out of my mouth. It's finding that sweet spot. Obviously, they've spent 3 months negotiating and doing that market research to find that sweet spot between our net zero D and going further beyond our net zero DPD, but also making sure we have engagement from the market, because there'll be nothing worse. We put so much stipulations in that no one wants the site. And as I've said earlier, every day we have that site, there are cost implications to it with maintenance and security and all that. So I think we have to find that balance, and I think we have found that sweet spot.
I guess you found a sweet spot. I think there would be other sweet spots that would be available. If, for example, look, we're going for 40% affordable, then insisting on that level for 40%, so not doing the passive, but doing 40% at that, so that then you've got 40% where it's both affordable to purchase and it's cheap to run. I think that I'd be very interested to know if that was potentially another sweet spot. Oh, and I've got one last question, and then I'll shut up. In our biodiversity net gain, in our statement, or ecological emergency statement, we included something around there where any project where we had a financial stake in a project, we would try and maximise the biodiversity net gain. So I'd be very keen to ensure that on this both of these sites that we are taking extra special care to increase the biodiversity across the sites. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kohler. I've got Councillor Day, then Councillor Barton. Councillor Day, first.
Chairman, I need, my questions really should go into confidential session. I don't want to transgress, and so I'm happy to wait until we're ready to do that.
Okay, so Councillor Barton is your question.
All that said and done, being Mr. Simple again, what happens when the builder comes back to planning and says we want to squeeze 5 more houses in? Are they tied up, or what happens?
So ultimately, it could also go the other way. So through planning and through all the constraints, it could actually be fewer homes that end up being delivered on the site. So as much as possible, we are seeking that a minimum, that we achieve the minimum number on this site, which is 287 that we would need to see on Lays Lane, 130 on Rouncil, to be able to comply with the HIF fund agreement that we entered into with Homes England. That's what we're looking to achieve on these sites. In reality, we have to accept that that has to go through the planning process and things have to be considered. So it could be that the developer who takes on the site comes in and goes, well, actually, yeah, I would like to try and achieve more on that site. But in trying to achieve more on that site, they'd have to increase the parking provision, they'd have to increase the public open space provision, they'd have to meet, the raft of policy requirements. The site is sort of really quite constrained in terms of that. So that's why we've ended up at sort of an indicative number of 287 is sort of where you can go. But that said, yeah, it could alter slightly. So, and like I said, the planning process or that element, it could be, that highways object or something to a particular thing or insist on a particular requirement, and then maybe we have to lose a dwelling or something like that. So it could go either way, to be honest, but that's the indicative number that we're all working to.
Right. Councillor Whiteman, is your question a public one?
I think this is a public one. I'm sort of treading rather gingerly around this. I mean, if anybody thinks it's going in the confidential session, please stop me and please take it into confidential. It was just in regards really to the recommendation 2D, because obviously one of the risks here we know is the housing infrastructure grant and the fact the clock is ticking on all of this. And it does worry me a little bit that we're searching for a sweet spot, but we're potentially putting in restrictions that are going to delay this and going to sort of bring an element of risk. I just wondered if there's any more you can tell us in public session, what the thinking is on that sort of mechanism in terms of trying to sort of alleviate the risk a little bit in terms of that housing infrastructure grant.
So in terms of that recommendation, obviously, when we entered into the grant agreement with Homes England back in 2019, there was a commitment that we would build houses on that site and that they would be completed by 2031. That is a commitment for WDC. We signed up to that agreement and passed the money on to the school from that grant. What that recommendation is for is to try and mitigate that risk, because if we transfer that, let's say we sell the site, we transfer it to Homes England, the clock is still ticking for us to have those houses built by 2031. So we needed to try and include something within those contractual terms that when we pass it on to a developer, or sorry, when we pass it on to Homes England and they pass it on to a developer, they're aware that we have a target to build those houses or substantially be on the way to building those houses by 2031. It's to try and mitigate against situations like if someone purchases the site and then simply banks the land for 5 years and doesn't build anything. I don't think anybody would, but for things like that, it's to try and minimise the risk that we have and make sure that our commitments for that site are accounted for in how it's disposed of in the future and the building work that happens there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I fully understand the motives for wanting a mechanism. I just kind of was trying to sort of understand a little bit about more what was envisaged. So that's actually something in the development plan that you're going to put with Homes England that would kind of release the obligation? That's what you're seeking to negotiate at that stage?
Well, given that Homes England are only concerned with the Lays Lane site, and that's obviously that's what this recommendation relates to, but yeah, we're trying to work with them to find a way of putting it within the contract for sale, within the heads of terms, or however else we phrase it, that there will be a recognition that that commitment to build houses is no longer directly within our control and that they somehow have to be accountable for that alongside us, rather than just us remaining responsible but having no actual control over what happens with the site in the future.
Thank you for that. I don't want to ask sort of too much about ongoing negotiations. I appreciate in a public session there's a degree, although I'm referring to things in the public paper, so I'm assuming this is all right. I note the sort of suggestion that on affordable housing that the thinking at the moment is the Lays Lane site, it would be 40% affordable, and there's mention of scope for negotiations once a developer's in place. I'm just trying to understand really what leverage we would have from that stage, because presumably it's thought we would have some leverage, but once we've entered a development agreement and we've set the affordable housing, would we have any? Is that a little bit wishful thinking? Is the reality that, it would be nice if we could negotiate, but, or do we think there's realistically a possibility that we could increase it? I mean, is that something we can ask in public session? Yep.
So I think with the recognition of Homes England's obligations, I mean, they can't commit to developing more than 40%, and they've been quite clear with us that that is within their remit. That's all that they can do. I think the ambition to engage with a developer after Homes England have passed the site on to them, we can't force the developer to do a 50% affordable housing scheme, because ultimately our policy requirements are only for 40%, so they can stick to that baseline. But we can, through the engagement with said developer, whoever that may be, we can encourage them to access the grant funding that's available to increase the level of affordable homes. We can promote the benefits of it. We can talk to them about how the council can work with them. But you're right, ultimately we can't force them to develop at a higher, at 50% or anything above that. It's just trying to find a mechanism to encourage them as much as possible.
I mean, just in my experience, we haven't appointed a developer yet, so I know there's an element of hypothetical future negotiations, but from my experience, developers generally don't forego profit because it would be a nice thing to do for someone else. And so I'm just thinking, realistically, it seems a little bit wishful thinking.
Sorry, can I come to Councillor Davis? I think Councillor
Simple sentence, the LGI money was for increasing energy standards and increasing percentage of affordable housing, so that might be used for that. Put bluntly, we might pay them.
Can I just come in as well? Just in terms of, it really depends as well what the market is like at the time when this is built out. Some developers are heavily involved in wanting to deliver additionality in terms of affordable housing, so that they can benefit from the additional grants, and also to help them with cash flowing a scheme and giving them some certainty over their sales, so they can project and do that, particularly in a slow market, which we've kind of got at the moment. So there are some developers out there who are very keen actually to go down the route of additionality and deliver that. So it really depends ultimately who is going to come in and purchase that. So I don't think we ever want to take it off the table. We want to always keep it there as a discussion, an opportunity.
Great, thank you. Right, I've got one quick question, I think, then we'll come to Councillor Days, but we'll obviously go into confidential. And it's just about the Rouncil Lane site. I know most of this is about Lays Lane, and I think I'm okay to ask this in public session, but I know there are some dates that we have to meet due to when the site was last occupied to get a planning application in, and I think July was the date from memory. Given it's February, how hopeful are we that we're going to get a planning application in by July?
Sorry, I'm just trying to find the exact date that they were.
I need to put my glasses on.
Sorry, September 26.
Yeah, it's September 2026 is the date. In reality, it's quite unlikely that site would get, because it's full consent it would need. So we're looking at obviously doing an exercise of expressions of interest and also some market testing and expressions of interest to try and sort that out. But I think in the case of Rouncil, it was significantly less of a potential saving to a developer. It impacts the scheme slightly less so than Lays Lane, because of the reason Lays Lane would massively benefit from it is because of the huge amount of floor area that site has got, but also, so it makes a saving on that site, but also it means there's a much higher cost of demolition on Lays Lane, whereas Rouncil Lane, both of those elements are lower. So I think we've had to focus all of our energy at this point with the resources that we've had on trying to move Lays Lane forward, and it may be at the impact of not hitting that particular SIL deadline.
Okay, thank you. So there's still a risk there, and it's a financial risk for us as a council, I presume, in terms of the value of that site.
So in terms of SIL, it actually means the council would get more SIL if the application, so it's the way it works. So you could see it as a benefit potentially. So it means that whoever buys it or develops that site wouldn't benefit from netting off that particular amount of SIL. They would be liable for more SIL, but the council would receive the SIL in that way. So it's you either get it through land value or you get it through SIL.
Yeah, understand. Will those match one for one? That's what I guess I'm asking. Okay.
I can't answer that question.
Sorry, that's an unfair question to ask. I think it's just, I guess, important for us to recognise there is still that risk there, and I get and with my Kenilworth Town Council hat on, some additional SIL is always very welcome. Right, yeah. Okay, right, so I'm going to move us into confidential session now. So I'm going to ask committee to consider resolving that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, that the public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following items by reason of the likely disclosure of exempt information within the paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, following the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order of 2006. I will propose that from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Luckhurst. All those in favour? Right, we are going.